It's good to see everybody here. As Hashem, it should be gesund. Well, starting the 3 weeks, as Hashem, Thursday with Shavas B'Tammuz is the beginning of the 3 weeks. And it's always a time period which, well, some tragedies, horrible things happened in Klal Yisrael. And it's pretty sad. L'maisa, I have to apologize, I didn't have a chance to make Mar Makomos. Part of the reason was it's away for Shabbos, but also there's like this absolute tragedy here in South Florida. A young woman who's terrorized suddenly. Mrs. Stern, a very popular teacher in Beis Yaakov. Miami, her husband was very involved. He's the director of the Kollel of Miami Beach. Involved in Besdin. Mamish terrorized a major heart attack. It's a horrible story. But unfortunately, during the 3 weeks, there's someone numb to these things. Things happen, and it's such a tragic time. I just saw, the terrorists, yeah. I just saw a thing the other day was the yurt site of a young Rebbe who was in a camp and this goes back a few years ago before COVID. And a child was drowning. Rabbi Bauman went out in Virginia and tried successfully rescued the kid. And he got caught up in the riptide. He wasn't nifter this time of year. Also, it wasn't the 3 weeks, it was right before it. But it's always, a sad, sad time of the year. And so I figured, it's not too early to start the halachos of the 3 weeks. And as Hashem, the schus of us learning the halachos of the 3 weeks and understanding them better should be a schus that, as Hashem, we should even preempt the 3 weeks this year with Avelos, but it should hopefully be the last time that we have to go through, these halachos. It's such a horrible period. Now, in particular, the topic of the 3 weeks, which I want to discuss, is many halachas. I figure I'll discuss clothing. Pretty relevant. We entitled this year Everything Clothing for the 3 weeks and the 9 days. And it's actually one of the questions that I do find people ask. Oops. Put something by the door. I always find people ask questions during the period of Sfira, time between Pesach and Shavuos. People a lot of times ask questions about the halachas over there, and there's a certain assumption that whatever the halachas are by Sfira, it's the same thing by the 3 weeks, 9 days. And in some things that's true, but not in everything. Clothing is one of those examples, as I'll show in a moment. Now, the halacha writes, I can apologize, I didn't get the Mar Makomos here beforehand. Hope post the share to post some. But the Shulchan Aruch writes in Siman Tav Kuf Nun Aleph, Sif Yud Zayin, that there's a minhag not to make a bracha of Shachianu during the 3 weeks. So normally, throughout the year, there are times you make a Shachianu, and you can make a Shachianu if you buy a new car. Major purchases are definitely grounds for Shachianus. Again, that really is its own department, its own share. But there is brought down the halacha, the concept of making a Shachianu when you buy clothes. Let's talk first by a man. There are many that say that when a man buys a new suit, a new suit is fit to make a shachianu. Okay, we could debate by women what clothing requires a shachianu. Careful what I say, but you go shopping all the time, it's not a big deal.
New shadle.
Right? Oh, right. A new shadle might be definitely what gets a little tricky, right? A shadle, right, might be a malbush, right? Pashtos. So I'll wear them on Shabbos. Right? I don't walk outside on Shabbos wearing a shadle. It's part of clothing. This is a lot of wear clothing. But yeah, shadle might be a perfect example of a shachianu by women, but I won't go through exactly what is and what's not. That also deserves its own share. Yes?
Just to clarify, when you're saying that we're not to make a shachianu during the 2 weeks, does that mean we don't make a shachianu even if we have new clothing, or it would be preferable not, or aser
Right.
not to have new clothing
Correct.
together, or a new car or whatever?
Right, right. The halacha, I was going to get to this, that's all.
Okay,
Preempted.
so
Is halacha of a shachianu, let's say by clothing, is you do not make the bracha of shachianu when you purchase a suit in the store. You make the bracha of shachianu the first time you wear it. So let's say you purchased the suit before the 3 weeks. Right, all their shot and tested, do all the thing, 9 yards, and now you have a new suit. One should not put on that new suit during the 3 weeks, because that would be the time when one would make a shachianu, and we don't make shachianas during the 3 weeks.
That would include Shabbos?
Oh, very good point. Right? What about Shabbos too? So, for that, there are heterim, which would say, okay, great. So if it's a Shabbos suit, I could put it on in the 3 weeks. Now, I want to be very careful when I use the words 3 weeks. When I say 3 weeks, I mean the big onset from Shavas B'Tammuz up until, let's talk simply for only Ashkenazim in the room, right? Up until Torah Kodesh, right? The way where really the halachos of Bein HaMetzarim, this time period leading up to Tisha B'Av, has multiple levels, right? There's what we call the 3 weeks. There's the 9 days. Then there's Shvuah Shechalbo, the week that Tisha B'Av is on, which this year I believe Tisha B'Av is on a Thursday, so it's a pretty long week. So that whole week has more Chomer Dinam. And for most Ashkenazim, for the most part, we treat the full 9 days like Shvuah Shechalbo. So yeah, one would be allowed on Shabbos to make a shachian on a new suit, but that's only up until Rosh Chodesh. Come Rosh Chodesh, it will be usher for one to wear a new suit on during the 9 days, in normal circumstances. Okay.
Yeah.
Huh?
Can you wear that suit Friday night? Because you're putting it on before Shabbos.
Excellent question. We're going to get to all this stuff. Okay, let's go slow. First step we want to talk about is this shachianu. Now, all these halachos are stemming from their minhagim. No, hagim is the little shonos that Chazal use. Now, what's the basis of this? Let's first get into the understanding of where this is all coming from. So, there's a Magen Avram, which actually, unfortunately, fits our theme that we started with. Magen Avram writes, "V'tama iser nirali, kiven dezmano hu zman pranios." The time of Bein HaMetzarim is a time of tragedies. Ein levarach she'achianu zman hazeh. So the whole nature of the bracha is thanking Hashem for coming to this time. But coming to this time is a time of tragedy. We can't thank Hashem for coming to the time of tragedy during the 3 weeks. But aval einatam yishum avelos. The Magen Avram says the reason why we make this bracha is not because of avelos, that that we're keeping Avelos already now from the onset of the 3 weeks. We don't find in simple halacha that an avel would be aser to make a shachianu. Shachianu is not an Avelos issue. Shachianu, according to the Magen Avram, is an issue of this is a zman pranias, a time of unfortunately tragedies, as I started off this year with. And Mamela, you can't say I'm thanking Hashem to come to this time. We don't say during this time. Now, it's interesting, the Gra takes issue with the Magen Avram, and he doesn't like his reasoning. The Gra seems to learn that it's associated with Avelos, it's connected to Avelos, but he doesn't learn it's based on the timing of the year. Now, halacha l'maisa, we paskin like the Magen Avram. Most poskim, the Shabura brings the Magen Avram. But what's interesting, I saw, I guess I give credit to Shmuel Kamenetsky's Talmud, Asher David Kleinman. He says, Pshat is, what's the machlokas between the Magen Avram and the Gra? That it's a shaila whether one could have simcha in the 3 weeks. According to the Gra, yeah, this is not Avelos issue. And the reason why you can't make a shechianu is there's a certain simcha a person has when you get a new suit, get a new car, or other things that would require a shechianu. So you can't have that simcha during the 3 weeks. The Magen Avram views it's not based on simcha, it's just a tragic time period. So we can't make a bracha thanking Hashem to come to a tragic time period. What's the difference between these two ways of thought? Especially since we paskin like the Magen Avram. So, very simple. Let's say you buy a piece of clothing, which halachically does not require a shachianu, but you happen to be very excited about it. I want to be careful what example I'll give. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's say someone's a sports fan.
Jets hat.
Right. Someone's a sports fan, and he gets for himself some sports item.
Paraphernalia.
Now he might be very excited he got that, but that's not something you normally make a shechianu on. Now, according to the Gra, seemingly you shouldn't put that on during the 3 weeks because it's a certain element of simcha involved, right? He gets some gadget on his watch or something, some gadget. So, okay, maybe he shouldn't have purchases of simcha during the 3 weeks. But according to the Magen Avram, which is the way the Mishnah Berurah paskins, no, it's not an issue of simcha. It's an issue of specifically making a shechianu during this time period. If I can't make the shechianu, then I can't purchase, I can't wear that item, and therefore I avoid it in the 3 weeks. Yes?
How would the Gra handle Yivdu as Hashem b'simcha? When you're davening, when you're doing this, you're supposed to just kind of go through it with a schlep for the 9 days or something?
Good question. I assume that, it's good you quoted me, Yivdu as Hashem b'simcha. If you quote me the other idea of mitzvah gedol, Yivdu b'simcha, I tell you there's no such chazal. But everything is
a nice song.
is relative, right? Everything is relative,
Get yourself in a bad mood.
and a person we hold the concept mitzvah sav lahanos. The mitzvahs we do is not for benefit. Okay, when a person does a mitzvah, he feels thankful that he has the opportunity to do a mitzvah, but that's not necessarily the simcha that a person has when he acquires something that he's excited about. Might be a different element. Yes.
Someone who's never been to Eretz Yisrael and can go for the first time during the 3 weeks or 9 days. So, of course, you have all kinds of emotions when you get there the first time, but simple is one of them.
Right. Look, there's nowhere in halacha it says you can't travel to Israel in the 3 weeks and 9 days. In some ways, there might be no better place to understand and observe the Korban than being in Eretz Yisrael. Now, in a certain sense, it's like such a simcha to be there. You're right. But, you scale it. One of the interesting halachas, since you brought it up, so I'll deal with it. And, Rabbi Berger, I think this addresses your question, too. I've mentioned this in Shirim in the past, but it's definitely not well known. Remember, we had shilas about this. You arrive in Eretz Yisrael. I'll give you the classic scene. Okay, let's say I have a flight that lands early in the morning. I decide, you know what? I have time. I'm going to go. I get to the Kosel in the morning. Beautiful chance. First time I go to the Kosel. Okay. So the halachas of Tir and Kriya, we go to the Kosel. Okay. Fine.
Everybody wants to make a shech.
We're past those. Right. We're past those things. Then, okay, what's the next place I go after I go to the Kosel?
Let's eat.
Let's get a shwam. I'm hungry.
Yeah, right.
The flight was the meals. Okay, I'm not saying which airline you went on, but the food wasn't up to par. You're starving. I'll go out. I'll get some good meat. I mean, lamb shwam like this. The basar. One of the halachas Mr. Burr brings down is the day that one sees the Makam HaMikdash and Tiras Kriya, he should not eat meat. Now, again, it's not my side job that I prepare travel itineraries for Israel. It's something I do when I take Talmidim, family, but a travel itinerary, party planners and travel agents, and not necessarily have the Mishabur on one side and the tour guide on the other. It's with these type of feelings, Chazal dictate feelings. Chazal say, look, a day like that, you shouldn't be celebrating, or you shouldn't have the enjoyment of having a meat meal. After Shkia, one would be allowed. So if it's 2 halachic days, that's okay. Yes?
That's only Bisman that there's no Beis HaMikdash, right? Because they used to try to get as many korbanos in as they could as soon as they could.
Yes. This is specifically halachas of the korban. Right? The halachas of a person visiting Eretz Yisrael is brought with the halachas of Ben HaMatzarim.
This is going to become a yontif at that point also.
Yeah.
So
you know what?
The whole thing switches over.
Correct. But you know what? It hit me in another angle. Think about this. The grouping in halacha of where those halachas are, that really means is the following. Any time a person goes to Eretz Yisrael, any time of the year, what really is happening on the first day when you get to Eretz Yisrael and you see the Makam HaMikdash is you now have your own personal 3 weeks, 9 days. That's really what's happening. Okay, it's not all the same halachas, right? Might be allowed to wear new clothing, but it's similar in halachas to that. When a person goes, he hasn't been there in 30 days, he's seeing the Makam HaMikdash, that is your 3 weeks. That is your Tisha B'Av. That first day. So really, there's no difference to a certain degree. You go during the 3 weeks, you go in 9 days. Anytime you go to Eretz Yisrael, unfortunately, when we're in Galus, that day is a day which there are halachos of how to treat it. Okay. Now, communally, we could be sitting here in Galus, back here in Florida, New York, wherever we are. When the 3 weeks come and the 9 days come, we have to observe that wherever we are. I think it's an excellent connection. Now, Lamaisa, this idea that I said, a person could wear a beged that brings him simcha even during the 3 weeks because of the fact that we pass him like the Magen Avraham, not like the Goral. That's a psak for Moshe Feinstein. I did see some modern day Svarim say, hey, Why do that? Why put on your fancy new Jets jersey? Your, there's a tzad, the Gra would be against it. You'll see the Gra be against wearing a Jets jersey for two reasons.
No, I would say the Gra would tell you where the Jets jersey.
Oh, okay. I can't resist. The comment that was made was that the Gra would say maybe you should put on your Jets jersey for Avelis. I hear. But Lamaisa,
Come on, Josh.
there are those that say there's a tzad to be machmer and not to wear luyitzer, some beged of simcha.
Okay, fine.
But Rav Moshe says one would be allowed as long as it does not require shachianu. Now again, as was pointed out before, these halachos of shachianu at the onset of the 3 weeks is suspended for Shabbos. One would be allowed to wear a new suit, clothing during the 3 weeks. But we'll see soon, not by the 9 days. Okay. Right. Lamaisa, another big nafkamina of this is, again, our minhag is we make the shachianu when we buy, let's say, a new suit, new clothing, we make the shachianu when we put it on. Would one be allowed, let's do a simple case, right? Seemingly even without a major sale. Whatever. You want to buy yourself a suit now during the 3 weeks. You're not going to wear it during the 3 weeks. But you can use it for afterwards.
See it.
I'm not even talking about Mitzia yet. Just simply. Right? So it would be allowed to be bought during the 3 weeks. People make this mistake, I can't buy new things during the 3 weeks. Not fully true. Since you can't buy, you could really even buy something which requires shachianu, but as long as you don't wear it during the 3 weeks, you're good. Because that's not when the shachianu is chal. If your minhag is to only make a shachianu when you wear it, one could technically buy anything during the beginning of the 3 weeks. Okay, so if you need to buy a suit, and for sure, I'll show you in a second, if there happens to be a sale or that much, or you won't be able to purchase it afterwards. Now you're able to go, now you have time off. One would be allowed to do that during the 3 weeks.
You're talking
The
about
only issue is the shachianu.
first 12 days.
Yes.
So you could buy a new car and have somebody else drive it off the lot.
Yes. Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
Why is this such a big simcha? It costs so much to buy these things. I mean, you have to empty your bank account. to buy a car.
You remind me of another halacha,
Get in
which is
major
also
pot.
sad. Yeah. Now with that, you don't find the helps in 3 weeks. I think it dates back. Your question connects also with the
Also
point
about
before.
suits. Used to be you had to get measured for a suit. The tailor would work on your suit for,
Days.
a month maybe.
Right.
Now it's not a big deal to buy a suit.
So I'll answer your second question first. When I say suits, you're right. There are some poskim, there are some people that do not make shachianu in a suit because it's not a big deal.
They could buy a Borsalino hat.
Yeah.
So what? I mean, everybody
Right.
has them.
Right,
So,
right. Based on how frequent or infrequent the purchases is a factor. But you're right. Also, suits. There are people that don't make shachianus in suits. That, again, is a whole discussion unto itself. If one does not make a shachian suit, then it wouldn't be a problem of even wearing it.
Rabbi Becker told me that.
Yeah.
It's not so push it today.
Right,
Then
right.
You make it with shahad.
Correct. Correct. Now, just back on your other point, it's funny, but the halacha dictates balances. Now, let's say Rahman son, the person, it's very interesting halacha. If a person's relative passes away, so close relative, you make varach dynamis. If that close relative passes away and leaves you Yerusha, I believe you make a bracha tov ametiv.
Yeah.
So those are funny dichotomy. On the one hand, you're mourning and you're expressing Baruch Dayan. At the same time, you got a financial windfall. You also have to thank for that. It's so funny how the halacha, how the Torah dictates, at the same time you can have mixed emotions, and there's a way to channel those mixed emotions. A tragedy, you say Baruch Dayan Emes. At the same time, if there was a windfall, even though that's not the thing you're focusing on, that's not what we're talking about today, and it shouldn't be. But at the same time, it did come, and there's halacha dictates for that. It's so fascinating, this dichotomy. Now, till now, we've touched on the 3 weeks, the period before Rosh Chodesh Av. Now let's talk the 9 days. Now, there's multiple issues, right? The Shulchan Aruch in Siman Tov Kuf Nun Aleph, but earlier in Sif Gimel, there the Shulchan Aruch talks about wearing and buying new clothing, and really it comes down to 2 isurim. Besides, you're not allowed to wear freshly laundered clothing, freshly washed clothing, and with that, a kal v'chomer, you can't wear new clothing. Right? If I can't wear a freshly washed shirt, then I also can't wear a new shirt. At the same time, there's also an isser on washing clothing. That means from the beginning of the 9 days and on, you're not allowed to do any laundry. And thus, you can't wear any freshly laundered clothing. Right? If stuff was washed beforehand, okay, of course you can wear that. Now, it's interesting, this halacha is not limited to clothing a person wears. Right? People may not notice this, but it also applies to tablecloths and bed linen. Person shouldn't have brand new sheets, shouldn't wash sheets, freshly washed sheets, the tablecloths. All of these things are included on the isser of having freshly laundered things during the 9 days. Now, mamela, that obviously means a person to the best of their ability has to prepare ahead of time that everything is taken care of before the 9 days. Because once the 9 days come, we'll see soon, many situations, no recourse. You're stuck. Yes?
New tablecloth. If you're using it for Shabbos specifically,
Okay.
would you be okay?
So we'll talk about that in a second. Not so pashut. Now,
Or clean underwear.
right? Yes, but we'll talk about that. What about Shabbos? If you look in the Ramah, keeps it going back earlier, Tov Kuf Nun Aleph, but this is Sif Aleph. There the Ramah writes, even the Gabe Shabbos, one cannot have freshly laundered clothing. Even on Shabbos. Shabbos is within the 9 days, so that would be Asr. Now this, let's spell this out. Freshly laundered clothing has nothing to do with the Shachianu. So the halachas we learned from the beginning of the 3 weeks, that's specifically limited to Shachianus. And we saw, the Gra might have said this is an expression of Avelos, but the Magen Avram learned no, because just it's a sad time of the year, can make a Shachianu. But from the onset of the 9 days, that's Avelos. This has nothing to do with Shachianu. Now when the 9 days come, why is he not having freshly laundered things? Nothing to do with Shachianu. The reason why you can't have freshly laundered things is this is a takana some form of avelos that Chazal put in place for us to feel the mourning over the Beis Hamikdash. So the same way, let's say for example, the halachas, you have 5 inuyim that we do on Tisha B'Av itself. You don't wash your hands. So part of that is to feel the avelos. A person feels, you don't wear shoes. You don't wear leather shoes. So a person feels in mourning. So the halachas of the 9 days, those clearly are mourning halachas. So, okay, the fact that you can't have freshly laundered clothing is for a person to be in the mood, in the mindset that you're in avelos. We're all in avelos. Now, seemingly, and that's where the Ramah is coming from, Shabbos too. Now, granted, on Shabbos, normally we don't have outward signs of avelos, but it doesn't mean b'tzina there isn't avelos. Person Rahmanson is saying Shiva, he's in avelos on Shabbos too. It's just outward expressions of that we don't do. But dvarim shebetzina, things within our house, yeah, that is.
He still changes clothes for Shabbos.
Oh, good point. Good point. Now that, I wonder, is halacha l'maisa we paskin based on the Gra that we do allow people to wear fresh clothing for Shabbos. So you're right. That might follow also the halachas avelos.
Even in your house.
Yeah. Yes, correct. Correct. So when it comes to clothing on Shabbos, halacha l'maisa we are makel, like the Gra. But one caveat. You could wear freshly laundered clothing on Shabbos Chazon, Shabbos during the 9 days. Sometimes there's 2 Shabbos in the 9 days, right? Double meat. But L'maisa, the Chavetz Chaim says you can't wear new clothing on that Shabbos. Important dichotomy. So you could wear freshly laundered clothing, but one cannot wear new clothing during a Shabbos in the 9 days. Now, let me go through some cases where we're makel even outside of Shabbos. A bris. Baruch Hashem, there's a bris in a mishpacha. So there they have the following heter. If you're the mole, okay, if you're the baal bris, okay, that means the kid.
The kid.
Or, right, the Avia Ben, the father of the child, also involved in the process. He makes a bracha, right? So all those would be allowed to wear new clothing.
The sandik.
Huh?
Here we go.
It does not. It's not clear about the sandik, nor does it say anything that the mother of the child can wear new clothing.
She's not that happy.
Right? She's not that happy. But
She did all the work, man.
yeah.
Yeah, you just had the fun, right?
So
I didn't say that.
Lamaisa, all those would be allowed to wear new clothing, Shabbos clothing I shouldn't say, be careful what I say, right? I'm not sure they can wear new clothing, but they could definitely wear Shabbos clothing during the 9 days. Another instance, someone's making a bar mitzvah, your bar mitzvah falls out, Shabbos chazon, right? Or better, right? Okay, Shabbos, you can anyway do it. So you have a bo bayom, you're celebrating the bar mitzvah. Look, this is the kid's bar mitzvah. Comes out then. So here, the halacha, this is a psak from Shlomo Zalman.
Talking about if it falls on Tisha B'Av?
Not Tisha B'Av itself, but during the 9 days.
Okay.
There's, you're gonna, right? Let's say the bar mitzvah itself is Shabbos Nachamu.
Okay.
But the bo bayom, let's say Tisha B'Av is Thursday. The bo bayom is Monday. Elaines,
Right.
they make a little suda, right, which is an Inyan. So there we say, very interesting, it's mutler for the Bacher bar mitzvah, his parents, mother included. And listen to this one. And the grandparents. Shlomo Zalman matter the grandparents to put on Shabbos clothing, to get dressed up for that bar mitzvah. But there's no heter for siblings. So if you want to have all the kids matching, okay, if it's old clothing, I guess that would be okay. But no freshly, and not Shabbos clothing either, pashtos. Yeah.
What if it's actually Shiva Sabatamas or Tisha B'Av itself, that it's the Bo Bayom that the boy's gonna wear?
Okay. Right? You still have to wear your sandals, your slippers.
Well, Shiva
Doesn't
Sabatamas though,
Yeah.
might be a
I'll tell you an interesting thing. My daughter reminded me when I was talking about what I'm giving Sharon this week. She said, I remember. It's good. People jog your memory. She's like, a few years ago, she had a vart. Someone made a little vart, a little chayim during the 3 weeks. I'm like, really? It's not exactly the best time of year to make a vart. A little chayim. Okay, look, Baruch Hashem, there are simchas. And sometimes there's no timing for the simchas. They made one. So I asked, can I get dressed up for it? This one, the thing itself was during the 9 days. So I told her, absolutely not. Yeah, I could obviously put on nice clothing, but the same halachas that apply to the 9 days apply here, right? You don't let a sibling of the bar mitzvah boy, get dressed up. And why is this different? You're a friend of the college. Okay. Once we're on the topic of varts and l'chaims, what happens if a boy and a girl on a shidduch date during the 9 days? Now, it's actually a very opportune time to go dating because most yeshivas finish by Rosh Chodesh Av. So yeshiva's finished. Mom, who am I dating? You have a date set up for me? It's a great time to go dating. So can you get dressed up during the 9 days? Good Shiloh. So I found even the B'nai Brak poskim says 100% one could get. I found the Chazon Ish and Vosner, both from B'nai Brak, and Yelsha from Yerushalayim, all say it's mutter for the boy and the girl to get dressed up to go on a date.
And can he shave?
But okay, we'll talk about that. That's a different topic.
What's that?
It's a good point.
And can he shave?
Can he shave?
It would be better to wait till 2
Right? That in yeshiva we used to have these shilas, and there would be heterim. Or Moshe does have a heter for dating, during both in Sfira and during the 3 weeks for one to shave. But it gets tricky. And there's a reason to shave for a date is because you make a better appearance usually if a person's clean shaven versus scruffy, unshaved. At the same time, he's not going to look from.
That's a problem.
And the girl may not understand, I have a heter. So the guy said, no, you should know I have a heter to shave. My Rebbe said, it's Ramosha, it's this. So you have to know who you're dating.
I only use a white table.
Right. But,
Plastic. What's that quip?
I did see the post when they give this heter for dating, they say in the beginning of dating. You've been dating for a while. Josh, you figured you out already.
That's no
So-
I've been dating for a long time, right?
Did you tell
Yes.
your wife about that?
Yeah.
She knows.
Okay. Switching topics. What about kids' clothing? Major topic. The halacha is for young children that make a mess. The Chai Adam defines that as 2 or 3 year olds. They're in diapers, always making messes. So those kids would be totally mutter to wash their clothing during the 9 days. Comes along Rav Moshe, and Moshe says, maybe you haven't seen the kids here on the Lower East Side. Rav Moshe says, it's not just 2 or 3 year olds. It's any kids who constantly get themselves dirty, right?
Even your 35-year-old.
I'd say there, you're a 35-year-old who's sliding into second base. But Lamaisa, even older kids, if it's normal, not above bar mitzvah, but let's say 5, 6-year-olds that are normal for them to come home dirty, they put frogs in their pockets. I don't know, the kid pulled out a frog from his pocket. Like, what? Yeah. So, you know, they're kids. So Rav Moshe would say that we would be allowed to wash it, their clothing. Interesting. A lot of times you have kids. Not only you have to wash their, wash up their clothing, you have to dry them off and like shmatas and clean them. Shmatas, one would be allowed always to wash. That get dirty and the stuff even during the 9 days. My wife always brings up this point, and she's asked multiple postsmen. No one gave her a heter, so I'm not going to give her a heter. But no, the shiloh is, my wife says, so you're telling me my kids I could do laundry on because they're constantly getting their clothing dirty. Who do they come to when they're with their dirty clothing? Me. I get dirtier all the time by kids. So I was going to say sorry. That far you can't extend it.
Okay, you don't have those kind of kids.
Yeah. But Lamaisa, also, once you're doing a load, you aren't allowed. Okay, can I throw on my shirt anyway? You're doing a load. There's only 5 things in there. It's not kedai to do a laundry room. Once there's no heter mitoch, you could do one. You could
It doesn't work like Bishul and Natu.
Yeah, not at all. Okay. Now, let's say you do have situations, right? And with air travel today, it's a simple scenario how this would come to, right? They're always afraid, they had a horrible week last week in the New York airports, managing things, and I hope today it gets better. This week also is a busy week. Who knows? Well, let's say a person's traveling, and come on, sometimes, your flights are not exactly as planned, and you don't have clothes. You're stuck in there were people last week that were stuck in New York for days, not just a day, days.
Rachmiel's been there an extra week.
Yeah, just because of flights and everything. So what do? You don't have clothing. And I can't wear the same shirt every day. I ran out of clothing. It's 9 days. So there is a heter, shas adchak, for one to get more clothing. But the question is the following. Should I wash or should I buy new? I need more clothing. Should I wash or should I buy new? So Moshe Feinstein says it's better to wash than to buy. So if a person's stuck, all you need is a laundromat, wash your clothing, and that way you'll be okay.
Hard science issue.
Yeah, good point. Okay. Hopefully, you go to the laundromat in the hood, no one's going to see you.
What if your date was?
Yeah, like date box play. Yeah.
What if she's in Washington Post?
Okay.
Then it's a shoulda. It's like,
A couple interesting points I'll give you quickly to end off. Clothing shopping during the 9 days. It's mutter for Rav Shmuel Kamenetsky's words are a bargain. You get a bargain, wouldn't be allowed to buy clothing for use after the 9 days would be allowed. In that scenario, if you have to be traveling, you're away from home, then the item you find you can't get back home. They don't sell this, right? I want a sweater. I want a winter coat. You can't get them in Florida. So that would be allowed to buy during the 9 days. Thirdly, if, let's say, a person, B'shas Adchak, is leaving on vacation right after Tisha B'Av, he has no time to go shopping, in the weird country you're going to on vacation, right? There's no clothing you can buy there. Fine. If you're really, really stuck, then that would also be a heter. Interesting idea. Is one allowed to buy, I don't have shoes to wear on Tisha B'Av. Could I buy that? Could I buy new shoes during the 9 days and wear new Tisha B'Av shoes on Tisha B'Av?
Yeah, great story on party time.
The answer,
Shoes is different than clothing.
so, not so posh, right? Talk about some of these things, right? Could be some pairs of shoes you can make a shachar. But comes halacha. Shmuel Kamenetsky remembered that back in the day in Lakewood, Rav Aaron Kudler allowed Rav Dov Schwartzman, big Talmidim, to buy a new pair of Tisha B'Av shoes. I remember being in Eretz Yisrael, you could always buy Tisha B'Av shoes in 9 days selling. L'maisa, I think, when you go through these halachas, in the world, a lot of times people, especially today, people ask, what should I be feeling during the 3 weeks and the 9 days? What should I be feeling? Unfortunately, the easiest way to connect to the 9 days is, Rahman Son, tragedies, and you have things which are not perfect. Right? The concept of time together, our personal sorrows we see around us, with the Geula is something we say in Tefillah. So, yeah, that's definitely a way to feel that. But first and foremost, the way Chazal expect us to feel these things is by doing these halachas, learning these halachas. When you learn the halachas of the 3 weeks, of the 9 days, you understand what it means as Zman Pranios, sad time of the year, you understand what it means, Hilchos Avelos, and you go through all these pratim that puts a person in a certain mindset. Okay, just like if I go to the Kosel, that day is a day of mourning. I'm excited I got to Eretz Yisrael. I could kiss the ground. I could pose for pictures. But at the same time, it's not a stira. Many times in halacha, as from the good questions that were brought up by the Chevra, we see you can have this dichotomy. You can have feelings of simcha and excitement to doing a mitzvah, to be in Eretz Yisrael. But at the same time, it's tsaris, it's tsar. There's things to feel. And by understanding and keeping the halachas, that's in some ways the best means to feel what these weeks are. And we should be zocha that HaKadosh Baruch Hu takes away our tsaros, and we zocha to the Geula Shlema from here of Yemeinu. As Hashem, I hope to give another share next week, and I hope the week after too. So the week after will be our what's it called? Our summary of all the shirim of the year, including also I hope to do another person topic the last week. Yeah, a Gadol profile the last week, and next week I already